I've got no disruptions in my hand. You can do the full combo. Okay, Paula, now. Hello, Misawa Nation. Today, we're going to be going over the best board breakers in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or at the very least, the ones that have given me the best results when I put them in my deck. You might want to stick around for this one, because by the end of the video, you are going to rethink everything you ever thought about board breakers. Since a lot of my IRL friends who don't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Watch these videos, shout out to you guys, you are awesome, I'm just going to briefly go over what a board breaker is. It's a slang term that duelists use to refer to any card that's sole purpose is clearing stuff off your opponent's field. You've got some monsters there? No, you don't. You got some spells? No, you do not. Back in the days of secondary school, when we all played on the playground, everyone's go-to board breakers were Dark Hole and Mystical Space Typhoon. But things have changed, and the modern state of the game has given us some insane stuff to work with. So let's get into that. If you ask me, the best generic board breaker that any deck can run is Triple Tactics Thrust. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bro, this isn't a board breaker, it's a searcher. And that's technically correct until you realize that this card can search Raigeki to destroy monsters, Feather Duster to destroy spells, Lightning Storm to destroy both, Talents to steal monsters, and Dark Ruler no more to leave monsters useless. The amount of versatility this card can give your board breakers is off the charts. And the conditions to get it used is pretty easy, because it's just your opponent has to use a monster effect in any phase during your turn. In a game where one of the strongest things you can do is have a monster that does stuff on your opponent's turn. You will 99% of the time be able to find some way to bait your opponent into doing something, play Thrust, and get the right one you need to clear their field. And of course, you also need a monster on their field to add the thing to your hand. But like I said, 99% of the time, that will be the case. And for the 1% of the time that it's not, and you can only set the thing, I recommend running a certain trap card, which I forgot to get out when I started filming, give me a second, called the Black Goat Laughs. A particularly nasty floodgate card that can just stop your opponent from summoning, and then negate their effects later on. So it's just a nice bit of backup for when your thrust doesn't exactly thrust too well. But out of all these generic board breakers I mentioned, we need to talk about Dark Ruler no more, because this card in particular, I adore it so much. I've had so many protagonist moments with it, when I'm losing, I draw one card, oh, it's Dark Ruler no more, boom, and now I am winning. The simple fact that monsters can't respond to this is just beyond incredible. So many boards, so many meta decks, they all rely solely on monsters. And with this one, well, they're going to have to start relying on their trap cards again. We're going back to the basics, like the entire field. Nothing works now. I will say though, I do run this one in the side deck because the main deck that I like to run board breakers in is Sky Striker, and that deck is all about getting to the one turn kill as fast as possible. And Dark Ruler does mean your opponent isn't taking any damage. So in a case when the field isn't an unbreakable powerhouse, and a nice and simple Raigeki can just clear it, I'm taking the Raigeki. But if I'm up against one of those super tough decks, where everything is protecting everything and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, then yeah, next round I'm swapping these out for these, and watching the fireworks happen. But speaking of Sky Strikers, and speaking of searchers that are just board breakers in a hat and trench coat, the Sky Striker deck actually has the best one in the entire game in my opinion. Namely Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. It's a lot less generic than Thrust. Not every deck will be able to run it, but for the ones that can, it is a godsend. Oh, and it's also a normal spell, so you can search this with Thrust, But yeah, let's take a look at the board breaking stuff this card can search you. Negate and steal. Destroy one monster, destroy one spell card. Recycle your used up stuff and then return cards on the field to the hand, non-targeting. And a kaiju style monster for dealing with those annoying towers monsters. Is that all? Well, maybe in a more balanced world, but nope! You can also draw a card if there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, which is not exactly a hard feat for a deck that's like 99% spells. Yes, this is just Pot of Greed, but better, and it will shatter your opponent's forces if you know how to play it correctly. It's nuts! But enough about flexing my own deck. Let's go back to talking about cards that anyone can use, like Forbidden Droplet. Just like Dark Ruler from earlier, it is an unresponsive board breaker, perhaps an even greater one, since it's not just monster effects that can't stand up to this. It's any effects as long as you discard the right cards. So yeah, this one's a menace. It's not a normal spell, so you can't thrust it, but it is a quick play spell, so you can use this on your opponent's turn as a disruption, making it one of the very few board breakers you're not going to mind drawing in your opening hand going first. And it's got some nice synergies too, because it's a quick play. You can use it as like discard fodder for your Radiant Typhoon Vision. And these two cards go very nice together because while Droplet is powerful, it can also be extremely costly. Because you are still discarding 1 card per monster you want to negate. And while a lot of cards do benefit you being in the graveyard, there will be times when your discards are making your resources run super thin. And on top of all that, you're still going to need monsters to like shatter your opponent's board because this doesn't destroy, it just weakens. Like, if that's just too many resources at the current moment, you can just be like, okay, Radiant Typhoon Vision, draw 2, discard the Droplet, and you will get more cards you need at that current point in time. A nice engine I like running is obviously 3 of both of these, and then 1 Mystical Space Typhoon since Vision can also search it. And I know what I said at the start of this section, but we also need to talk about how good Forbidden Droplet can be in Sky Striker. If we go back to our lovely Negate and Steal Widow Anchor, this one, you can only use it if you have no monsters in your main monster zone. So if you have multiple of them, let me just get another one. You might be a bit scared of using the steal effect, because if you steal with one, you won't be able to use the other unless it's a direct chain. But this card negates that risk, pun intended. Because like, negate and steal with the first one, and then when you want to negate again, use your Forbidden Droplet and send the stolen monster as material for Droplet's activation. So yeah, you can just do that, and then, oh, there's a third negate! I am so sorry, opponents. Please don't rage quit. I'm not a toxic player, I promise. And also, another way of mitigating Droplet's cost is, well, it's a quick play spell. And you can send stuff from the field too, like I just demonstrated. So, let's say I want to negate 1 monster. And I also have a random card, let's say Harpy's Feather Duster. I'll activate the Duster, wait for their response, and once they've done with their response or just said, nope, it's okay, chain the Droplet and target the Duster. So you can negate and also get like the use of your Duster's effect, or whichever spell you want. Lovely, lovely stuff. We've talked about good board breakers, we've talked about the best board breakers for generic decks, but what, in my opinion, is the all-time greatest board breaker? Accessibility be damned, which card do I love the most when it comes to wiping out my opponent's forces? Easy. Super Polymerization, which I run at 3 copies in my Dragon Maid deck. The amount of options this card gives you is off the charts. Like, it's unresponsive to anything from the get-go, so you don't have to worry about chains. You just have to discard one card to activate it. So while it does have a cost, the cost isn't as bad as Droplet. And then you can fuse away your opponent's monsters, which is a lovely thing to be able to do in a game where there's fusion monsters with super generic requirements. Obviously, the two main ones, which are kind of mandatory, is Mud Dragon and Garura. But if you're like me and you have some extra deck room to spare, you can also have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon for all those dark types. And since Dragon Maids is a dragon deck, a few more monsters become honorary Super Poly targets. Dragon Maid Shio, which is 1 Dragon Maid plus 1 high-level dragon. That'll be my maid and your boss monster, please. On a similar note, Philia Regis, Light and Darkness Dragon Lord. Both of these have come up just because of them being like generic dragon-focused boss monsters and a lot of powerful decks being dragon type. And, of course, who can forget Chaos Star Source Dragon, another generic dragon target. But for this one, I do like using my own monsters, just because, well, if you use your opponent's monsters, you don't get the destruction effect. So yeah, I love Super Poly. What can I say? I only run this in Dragon Maids and not in Sky Strikers or any other deck though, just because I do feel Super Poly works best in a fusion-focused deck. I know some people run it in non-fusion decks with just 3 of these and then, of course, Garura Mud Dragon, but that just doesn't really vibe with me. Like, for me, it's not as effective as just running the classic, Triple Tactics Thrust package with all the good destruction stuff. Simply because if your opponent is playing a deck where they're all different attributes, you can't Garura and Mud Dragon fuse them off. You just can't. Super Poly's just sitting there, and you still have to discard a card. So yeah, I only prefer it in like decks where if I can't fuse my opponent's stuff, it can still work as a regular fusion spell. And of course get me some legendary Dragon Maids. And yeah, another thing I like about this being in fusion decks is that you can get a pretty funny OTK, like just get some dragons out, have this in your hand, like attack, Super Poly in the battle phase, fuse them off into like a 3rd dragon and attack for game. So you can do funny shenanigans with that. I do feel, yeah, it does lose a lot of its power if you're not playing it in a fusion deck, which is why you should only stick it with its intended use. And yeah, that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed, guys. Hope I didn't waffle too much, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!